What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. I hope everyone enjoyed that presentation I had prior to the intro here. This is what's going to be in the Inverse Academy episodes, and this is what's going to be differing from the regular videos from the Inverse Academy episodes, because in these Inverse Academy episodes, I really want everyone to be educated on how these new decks are performed and how they work. But without further ado, we have our first Inverse Academy episode for Set 8. I'm very excited to talk about these new occurring decks that are going to be pretty meta, or decks you're definitely going to be seeing for this set. And if you don't have access to seeing these decks and cards and stuff like that, by the end of the video, hopefully you'll know how this deck is performed and you might be interested in picking up the deck. And if you don't already know, today we're going to be talking about Puppet Force, and this is going to be the premier Forcecraft deck for Set 8. This is going to be the deck that's definitely going to be running around in the meta. Hopefully in English Shadowverse Evolve, we'll have lots of different variations of the build, but from JP stats, definitely there won't be too much from the core build to really change. But of course, without further ado, let's talk about the pros and cons of the deck. So for pros, we have Storm combo and late game flex, while in the cons we have early game, removal, not many starters, and sequencing. So starting with our first pro, so we have Storm, so it's very nice to have cards that are going to be threatening damage this very same turn that they're played. And then following up with that, we have Combo, which is going to be pretty nice to have along with the Storm too, so you can go ahead and do multiple things in one turn, get a very big board, and then buff it at the same time. And there are certain cards that have Storm, so buffing up those Storm cards are going to be nice for good damage. And then lastly, we have the late game flex. So the more play points that we have to play around with, the better this deck definitely gets. So as we are going to be doing Storm and Combo in the same time, we have a variety of late game cards that we can definitely look at as in Forcecraft that can really close out games. But getting over into the cons, so we have early game. So one thing that this deck really does need is to take some time to set up. So early game is not the best where this deck survives, so you do get some 1-cost, 2-cost plays, but if you don't see those cards that are going to be generating what you need in the early game, you're not going to have a very good time. Alrighty, and the next one we have is removal. So most decks usually have a guaranteed card that says, hey, remove something off the field. Well, unfortunately in this deck we don't have any hard removal like that, so we're going to use our other cards to have to generate some value in terms of removal, and we really don't want to do that when playing cards out. Alright, so this next point kind of goes hand in hand with the early game. So one thing we're going to want to do is generate as much puppet value as we want through turns 1 and 3. That's what we're going to want the most of. Sometimes we can't always get that with every 4-card hand. So if you don't get any puppet generators in your first hand or any of your mulligan hands, you're not going to have a very good time. Alrighty, and lastly we have sequencing. So it's one thing to be able to play out cards all nice and dandy, but you do have to remember we are a combo centric deck, so we need to make the right plays at the right time, or we at least need to sequence the plays correctly so we can make sure the right card gets the buff at that very good time, because that card could very well be the card that you use to end the game. Alright, so let's talk about our legendary card Orchis. So Orchis is our first card who has an evolved card that are on both sides of the card. So for official ruling and everything, you can only include 3 evolved cards of Orchis. And when you do evolve Orchis, you need to declare which version you are evolving into, and you will be flipping whatever side of Orchis you want to be using to evolve into that Orchis. And with that being said, with Orchis being a double-sided evolve card, you need to now make sure that it is in the rulebook now that your evolve cards like Orchis that have double side cards either need to be covered up in the form with using a sleeve or by other means. Alright, so let's get into our legendary. So we have our Orchis Puppet Girl. So she's a 3-cost 2/2. You can evolve for 1 into Orchis Resolute Puppet, or you can evolve her for 4 and turn her into Orchis Vengeful Puppet. And you can only activate the evolve for 4 if you have at least 3 Puppeteer cards in your cemetery. But evolving Orchis Puppet Girl for 1 turns her into the Orchis Resolute Puppet, which is a 3/3. And evolve, you summon 2 puppet tokens, and once each per turn, when a puppet you control leaves the field, put a Lloyd token into your EX area. And then if you evolve Orchis Puppet Girl for 4, you turn her into Orchis Vengeful Puppet, and she turns into a 4/4. And on evolve, you summon 4 puppet tokens, and while this card is on your field, each puppet on your field has a sail. And whenever a puppet you control leaves the field, select enemy leader or enemy following the field and deal it 2 damage. And then we have our Lloyd, which is a 0-cost 2/4 with Ward, and when you play Lloyd, you give your leader +2 defense, and while this card is on your field, its name is also Puppet. So I like the flexibility that Orchis has here. So in the mid game, you're going to be using her in the Resolute Puppet form to go ahead and spawn 2 puppets out, and then rushing one of those puppets into a follower in the mid game. They're not going to be that big, so just rushing one of those followers and turning them into a Lloyd in the EX area is going to be nice. Lloyd is a free card that you can play with Ward, heals you for 2, it's nice. But getting into the bigger evolve, that's where you're going to be towards into the late game. So talking about Vengeful Puppet here, so filling up your entire board with puppets that are able to swing into engaged and or reserved followers, and then whenever those puppets leave the field, they're going to be either burning that extra follower for extra 2 damage, or you're going to be burning your enemy leader's face for 2. One of the things I really do like about Vengeful Puppet is that if you're having trouble swinging into your enemy leader because you're just too busy dealing with their stuff, this is a very good card to just go into to deal with their stuff and also burn them in the face. Alright, so let's talk about our puppet spawners. So we have our card that came out in set 1, we have Junk, so on turn 1 you can just play it and you put 2 puppet tokens into your EX area. A very good way to go ahead and start turn 1 out, to go ahead and put 2 puppets into your EX area, and if you ever need the occasion to play a little aggressive, it's something nice. And then next up we have Liam, Master of Puppets. So it's a 2-cost 2/3, and when it comes into play, you put 2 puppet tokens in your EX area, but you can also engage them to look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may reveal Puppeteer card from among them and add it to your hand. You put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order, and you can only do this if you have at least 3 Puppeteer cards in your cemetery. Wonderful card in the early game, and if you see it later on after your opponent definitely deals with your stuff, it's just a good generator for just, you know, draw 1. Alright, and then we have Flower Doll. She's a 2-cost 2/2. When she comes into play, you put a puppet token into your EX area. So it's not every game that we're going to be able to see Junk or Liam, and Flower Doll is just a good way to put an extra puppet into your EX area, or if you manage to miss a puppet in the early game, on turn 2, she's not a bad card to put down. Alrighty, and then next up we have Heartless Battle. So it's a 3-cost spell. You select up to 2 cards named Puppet in your EX area, and you transform one of them into a Lloyd token and one of them into a Victoria token. Alright, it's going to be really nice that we're going to be able to transform our puppet tokens into something else, because we really want to not have those tokens be 1/1s in the EX area. We really want to transform them and turn them into something else. Or later on in the game, if we still have those 1/1 tokens, they're not going to be bad for our later game plays. So I do want to give an honorable mention to Automaton Soldier. This is a definitely a good 3-cost follower that you can put 2 puppet tokens into your EX area. If you're having a problem with the ratios in terms of, you know, having maybe 3 of Junks and then you didn't want to put 3 Flower Dolls, or if you want to run this instead of Flower Doll, I think this is a good thing to think about. Alright, so let's talk about Zwei. So Zwei is our 3-cost gold card that really helps with our removal. Alright, so we have Zwei, Murderous Puppet. She's a 3-cost 2/2. You can evolve her for 2, but when she comes into play, select a puppet in your EX area and transform it into a Victoria token. And while you evolve Zwei, she turns into a 4/4, and on evolve you select a Victoria on your field and it doesn't take damage this turn. And while looking at Victoria, she's a 0-cost 4/1 with Rush and Assail, and when she's played you draw a card, and while this card is on your field, its name is also Puppet. Alright, so for a total of 5 play points, you're going to be transforming a puppet in your EX area into a Victoria. You can play Victoria at any point in time since she costs 0. You're going to draw a card, she has Rush and Assail, but when you do evolve Zwei, you can make sure that this Victoria doesn't take any damage, so you can swing in and then make sure your opponent's able to deal with this Victoria on their turn. Alright, so let's talk about our late game card Noah that came out in set 5, but didn't have any really good support for him, but now Noah's time is to shine right now. Alright, so Noah's a 5-cost 3/6. You can evolve him for 2. When he comes into play, you put 2 puppet tokens into your EX area. And whenever a puppet is on your field, give a +1 attack and storm. And when you evolve Noah, when this card is on your field, any puppet you play costs 1 less. So if you have been paying attention, you can already tell that there's going to be a lot of aggressiveness once you play this Noah and then have Lloyd and Victoria in your EX area. So usually the play is you go for the Lloyd and the Victoria in the same turn, so you can get a lot of storm damage in if your opponent doesn't have a ward. And if you're able to close the game out with a total of 7 play points, if you don't go for the Orchis Vengeful Puppet, you can definitely go for Noah here and then close out the game there. Alright, so let's talk about combos. So it's nice that we have storm cards, but it's going to be even nice if we're able to buff up our storm cards in the very same turn if we need to, or go a very secondary route in combo if you need to. So of course we have cards like Anastasia and Goddess by the Sunlit Sea, which is going to really help us out, and Goddess by the Sunlit Sea also does work with Noah since he's a 5-cost follower if you need to get out that combo. And then to pair up with a combo, we have Elf Song and Sukuna. So Sukuna turning into a 5/5 with Storm and combo 5, which isn't very hard because we have our 0-cost puppets that are going to be playing to add on to the combo. And then closing out your buff with a Elf Song is also good too, while summoning in a Fairy, and then, you know, also buffing with Anastasia, because you can definitely get to those 5 plays in one turn when playing this deck. I do want to give an honorable mention to Fashionista Nekla. If you don't have it in your version of the build or any build of yours, I'd say consider it if you want to look very different, or if you want to swing for more damage or deal with an enemy follower. The multitude of this is just very nice. Alright, so let's talk about neutrals that'll really help out in the deck. So we have these neutrals here. These aren't cards that are definitely going to be in the deck, but these are cards that'll really help out in your deck line. So of course we have Colorful Cook. That's going to be a very good card to put out in a Tyrian Great Tree and then heal you if you have any terms of going against an aggressive deck. Just healing for 1 and not taking as much damage is very good too, while also having some filter is very nice through the Great Tree. And Fina is probably most likely going to be more in the deck just because there are 1-cost followers in the deck that we really want to look for. This deck doesn't draw too much, so having a Fina as some extra support is really nice. And then of course we have our new Mrs. Tartman. Of course I had to do the UR version of it than the regular version because, you know, look at this card. But Tartman is going to be very good in the deck too, just because it's a 4-cost play. If you're going up against a very control heavy deck and you don't want to throw everything out on your field and then make them responsive to board wipe or everything, I think this is a good card to maybe look at. Alright, so here's our late game alternative. So if you're not going to be going for the combo play, then these are some very good cards to go ahead and play to either generate some value in terms of Storm or to really help out your hand. Of course, we have King Elephant being a big boss monster. For however many cards are on your field, you can return them and he becomes a big monster, and then when you evolve him, he becomes that big follower again with double the stats, and then he also ignores ward if your opponent is really holding onto a ward. And if you're having a real time finding the cards that you need to close out the game, Spinaria can really help out, especially combining that with Goddess of the Sunlight Sea. I think these are just a really good combo to put together, and especially if you're in combo 3 already, recovering those 3 play points is not that bad. Alright, so let's talk about our game plan. So of course in the early turns we're going to try and fill up our EX area with as much puppets as we can, and then we're going to use Heartless Battle to transform those puppets into Victorias and Lloyds, so there'll be free plays that we can go into combo or to help deal with our opponent's board, or just whatever situation gives for to either heal 2, draw a card, whatever you need in that situation. So what we're really doing is answering our opponent's board in the mid game. So if they're going to be playing 5-cost followers, we're going to be using Orchis' effect to go ahead and evolve her, get those 2 puppets out. If we've already used Heartless Battle and turning those puppets in the EX area into Lloyds and in Victorias, it's going to be nice to use those puppets when you summon with the Orchis Resolute puppet to summon 2 and then swing into a follower, get an extra Lloyd, so you have now 3 EX area plays that are free that you can go into combo in the late game, or go ahead and use a Victoria if you need to finish off a follower. And if you are a visual learner, I went ahead and made a little clip from me and Chris's playtesting session on figuring out how this deck really works, because I didn't know how this deck worked too much at all when first playing it. So learning through visual is also nice too. So this is what an optimal play will look like. Alright, we'll draw. Go to 7.
Sorry, I do. Nah, never mind. Never mind.
We'll spend 5 and we'll play Anastasia. We'll cover 2 play points. We'll spend 1 and we're gonna play Sukuna Brave and Small. We're going to play out Lloyd and heal 2. Everybody's. Oh, I'm gonna recover 2 play points.
Okay.
That's the next one.
Oh, I'm sorry. You take 1 damage. I'm sorry. From the Shadow Coercion.
Just only heal 2. It's actually just a build 16. Just 3. We'll spend 1. And we'll play Shinko Wendy. I'll look at the top card of my deck. See if it's gonna stay there or not. Oh yeah, it's gonna stay there. We'll spend 2. And we're gonna play out a Elf Song. I summon a fairy.
Okay.
Everybody gets a +1/+1. And then everyone's gonna get a +1/+1 again. gonna spend one. We're gonna evolve Sukuna. Sukuna is going to be a 6/6 with Storm. And we'll swing 6 at you.
Got it.
And we'll pass the turn. Alright, so I'm hoping you enjoyed that little presentation there. Let me know in the comments below if I played that incorrectly. Like I said, this is my first time playing the deck too, so I'm doing my best in explaining things. Alright, so let's look at some tech cards that I think are going to be very nice in this meta, or just any versions of Forestcraft that might really help out in different scenarios. Alright, so I really think these are going to be cards you might really need to look at in terms of like different decks that are going to be playing against you. So I will try my best to explain all these cards for every different scenario. Alright, so for Archer first, so the early game is where we are the weakest, so if you're going up against a very aggressive deck, I cannot tell you the ratios and what you might need, you know, you'll definitely have to play that out for yourself. But if you're going up against a very aggressive deck, I think Archer is just very good to play with tempo on 2, just because on turn 3, if you already have the turn 1 junk and then have those 2 puppets in your EX area, following up with an Archer and then turning those cards in the EX area into 0 cost plays are going to be very nice to go ahead and just play those 2 cards out and deal with a follower that's swinging into you in the early game. And then next up, looking at Mark of the Six, of course every Forestcraft player knows that they don't want to take at least 7 damage looking at a Forte, and I think this is just a very good card to just slide in there. Alright, and I know you see the Lyrial, but hear me out. Okay, so the one thing you don't want to go up against is a deck that's not doing damage to you through followers, so you can't really interact. So having Lyrial as a nice little tech card to slide into your deck so you don't take burn damage and they have to make sure they take care of this Lyrial before they start burning you for damage is just a very good card to look at. Decks like Disdain and maybe their mirror match, maybe. I don't exactly know how their mirror match will play out, but just stopping the Resolute Puppet for burning your face with every follower that swings in is just very good. Alright, and lastly we have Cassiopeia. So her ability really kind of fits with the deck, so I'd say this is a very good tech card in case you need to remove multiple cards in the very same turn. And having an EX area full of puppets is just very good if you have Cassiopeia in your hand and you really just want to hold up. I don't think that's that bad to just look at. Alrighty, and we are here in the grade of the deck, so if you know how Inverse Academy goes, we grade the decks on how they are through S tier to, you know, A tier, B tier, stuff like that. But before we get into it, I want to present a very sample deck list of the Forestcraft build that I've been working on, or something you can definitely change around that you guys can really work on when playing the deck. Alright, so here is my sample build for the deck. I think this is a very decent version of the deck. I think it has some very good ratios and whatnot. I think the MVP, personally, for me in the deck is Shinko Windy, especially if you're going to be running a 1-cost build with the Fina. I think this card is just very good just because if you're going to be going into Liam, if you're going to do a top 3 play, looking at the potential puppet that you might be getting off the top 3 is just a very good combo play to do. And if need be, if you want to run Nature's Guidance in the build for the combo play, I think having Shinko Windy as the 1-cost card that you bounce back to your hand is not also a bad play either. And personally in my build, I went for the Fashionista Nekla play. I've always enjoyed this card even when playing it in the Fairy Forest build. I think just giving a follower +2/+2 while also swinging for the storm damage can definitely make a difference. But yeah, this is the entire deck list. I have a deck code in the description below if you guys want to check that out personally. You know, definitely build to how you play. You know, this is a good basis to go ahead and go off of, and then, you know, generate some different changes from there. Alright, so getting back into the grade of things, so what we found out in the deck is that there are a multitude of plays, and you can have big storm plays in the late game. So I think this deck is a pretty solid A+ deck. I think if you want to take it to a regional, this is something you can have some good support and some good, you know, time with. I think the different generations of play that you can definitely make in set 8 through this deck is just very good. And I hope in the future that this deck can get some more support or, you know, can get even stronger. But as of right now, I think it's going to be a very popular deck. So definitely learn your matchups for this. And then if you're going to be playing this, then learn your matchups for other decks so you can do well. But alright soldiers, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here to the end of this episode of Inverse Academy. I think Puppet Forest is going to be very popular this set, and it's going to do very well this set, so, you know, look out for it and learn your matchups for it. I know I already said that, but, you know, hopefully you have some good luck in your games in the future, but be safe in whatever you do tonight, and be safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah. TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do. What I got to do. Just to get you away. What I got to do.